I created a distressed postage-inspired card and tag that's going to give you vintage vibes. Hey everyone, it's Joy here. Welcome to my channel. This is Stamperia's Masquerade rub-on transfers. Then I am using the thank you shaker tag. It's no longer available. I'm so sorry. I have another one listed. Then we have the nested stitched stamps and the Spanish tile stencil that I'm going to be using. I'm also going to be using the Sprigs die. So I am going to start by getting some color on my background. I originally was going to do 2 tags, but I changed my mind. I'm only going to do 1 and then a card. I am using Weathered Wood Distress Oxide ink. I smushed that onto my acetate, spritzed it with a little bit of water, and then I'm adding it to my tag. Then I'm going to do the same thing with Peacock feathers. I'm trying to mimic some of the colors that are in those gorgeous rub-ons. And if you guys have been following me, I've been using a lot more of these rub-ons because they are absolutely stunning. They're just so beautiful. So I'm going to add a little bit more of this Peacock feathers. I just felt like that wasn't quite enough. And so I'm going to place that down. And I think this is a good amount of color. It kind of pulled up a little bit, totally fine. I'm just going to move that ink around. And I'll use my heat tool just to let these dry quickly. And I will show you what I did for the card background in just a little bit. Then we've got this gorgeous Spanish tile stencil. And I am using Uncharted Mariner, and I'm just going to stencil it in a few areas, not over the whole background. And then I'm going to go back over with the leftover ink on my brush and just kind of go over those areas where I stenciled to make that a little bit darker, if that makes sense. I just wanted to bring more of that Uncharted Mariner. I think it's so pretty. And then I'm going to splatter with some Vintage Photo Distress Oxide ink. So I just added a little bit of water to that. Actually, I added a lot of water to it because I wanted it to be a softer look. So when it dries, it's going to be a little lighter in color rather than it being really concentrated. Now I have die cut 4 of the nested stitch stamps dies, two of each size, sorry, excuse me. And this is what is going to carry the rub-on transfers. So I'm just going to trim those out. I'm going to lay those on, and I can just run this through my die cut machine with all 4. And I'm going to lay down just a really thin piece of like copy paper on my plate for my gosh, I can't talk, on my plate for my die cut machine. That way any of the pieces of the rub-on transfers that's hanging over doesn't get on my plates. So I've got one more here, and I'm going to cut this one out and place this down on the smallest one. And then again, like I said, I can just run this through my die cut machine, which makes this go so much quicker. But if you don't want to do that, you can use your Pick Pro tool. You could use the little popsicle stick that comes in it. Although I don't know if this one had a popsicle stick, so ignore what I'm saying on there because this one may not have had one. I did not look. But you could use anything to burnish it, is my point. Now I'm going to slowly peel back. And I'm peeling back the release paper that's not hanging off the edge because you might have some of that rub-on transfer pull off. And so I was just kind of being careful. And anything that hangs over the edge, I'm just wrapping around those little pieces of cardstock. Then I'm going to add a little bit of color here. I didn't want to leave it white, and I'll tell you why in just a second. But I'm using Uncharted Mariner to give a little color around all the edges of the rub-on transfers on that white cardstock. I'm going to add just a little bit more, and I mean just a little bit. I don't want it to be crazy dark. I am going to leave the postage part of the frame that you saw me take these center pieces out of. I'm going to leave those white. So I really want this background here to stand out from the white frame. But I'm also going to distress this part and not the white frame. And I really love how that turned out on these cards, where you have some real distressed vintage looking areas. And then you have some clean lines. And I think the when you marry those two together in the right way, they look beautiful together. And that really came out clear on this card and tag. So I'm just going to take my scissors, rough up the edge. Now, when you ink blend first and then rough up your edge, you're going to have a white edge, which is what I'm going for. If you don't want a white edge, rough it up first and then ink blend. Say if you wanted to have a dark blue edge, do it that way. But I wanted the white edge, and I am using Scrapbook.com's mixed media white cardstock. It's nice and thick. I really, really love that cardstock. It's so perfect for me anyways, for the way that I do mixed media. And yeah, I can't say enough about that cardstock. Okay, so now here is my background for my card. I think this is, I measured it 4 inches, 4 3/4 inches square. I'm going to use the same colors, the Weathered Wood Distress Oxide ink, the Peacock feathers, and then I will splatter it with some of that vintage photo. But I just wanted to show you again, you know, how you can put this background together. This was a little bit splotchy for me, meaning I didn't put enough water on my acetate, so I'm using my distress sprayer to spray some water on the card itself to kind of grab that ink and move it around and make it a little bit softer. Then I'm going to dab off the excess water because I don't need all of that. I don't need to waste the time trying to dry it all. And then we have the Peacock feathers. I'm going to lay this down, kind of smush it around. I love using the acetate because I can really see what the heck I'm doing and where the ink needs to go. I'm going to do that one more time. It needs to be a little bit darker. I would rather start off lighter and then go darker than it being too dark and feel like I have to start my background over. So that's kind of what happened here, because I still wanted this to have a really nice light feel without it being too dark in all the areas. So we'll take my heat tool and heat that till it's dry. And I'm going to do this one more time because I want some other darker areas. So I did dry that. That way it didn't mix. And now you can see I have some darker of that Peacock feathers. And that is perfect to me. I think that turned out really, really lovely. So I'm going to dry that. And then let's use that gorgeous Spanish tile stencil and Uncharted Mariner. And I will just stencil in some areas, not the whole background. I just want bits and pieces of this stencil. And then once I'm done stenciling with the ink that's left over on my brush, I'm just going to lightly go over the stenciled areas and make those areas a little bit darker, and with the Uncharted Mariner, because we didn't use that for any of the ink smushing. That's just reserved for the stenciling and the ink blending. But look at how pretty that is. I think this turned out so nice. Maybe I didn't ink. No, yes I did. Okay. I'm like, I thought I ink blended the background. I did. Very pretty. Okay, so that is done. Let's do the vintage photo. Again, extra water if you want it to be a little bit lighter. And I'm not splattering the whole thing. I kind of want it heavier in certain areas instead of lightly over the whole background. And then of course I'm going to distress the edges of everything. And again, I apologize for using this tag. I didn't realize that it was not available anymore. So I did put another tag die in my links below for products. So let's rough this up on the edges here, and then we can start getting this card put together. So I wanted to get my sentiments stamped out. I am using the Happy Birthday stamp set from Scrapbook.com. I am stamping the Happy Birthday sentiment and the Celebrate sentiment because I figure this tag really can be a decorative tag for a present, but I did want it to have a little sentiment on it. And then obviously the happy birthday for the birthday card. I have die cut another one of those tags for the backer piece. I did not distress that, and I did not ink blend it. It's just white. And then my card base measures 5 by 5. And I'm going to adhere that right in the center. I'm totally kind of digging the white frame against that white distressed edge. I'm just having a lot of fun with that. And then I'm just putting the whole reinforcer that did come with this die around on the front and the back, and I just did that from white cardstock. Now I had some burlap ribbon in my stash, and I thought that would be a really pretty ribbon to stick through the top, and then I'm just going to use a little bit of like hemp cord to tie around that top piece. And I'm going to make a little knot, and then I will trim off a lot of that excess that's hanging over the edge. Now we can put together our little postage stamps with our images. I used the Sprigs dies. I die cut out some white sprigs, keeping that white. Something I'm also loving is adding bright white details that are clean to a distressed card. Like, that's something I'm really enjoying. So let's start with this tag. This is the largest one. I'm going to add liquid glue just on the areas, obviously, that's going to be adhered to the tag. So that's going to be adhered directly down. I'm going to do different ways of dimension on here. I had to get a little creative with different heights. This is a 1 millimeter, so very small, because I wanted all of the images to be popped up from the postage frame background. I just feel like they're so beautiful that they kind of need to be front and center. Then for the smaller one that is going to overlap the larger one, I need to pop that up with bigger foam adhesive. So I am going to use a 2 millimeter foam adhesive, I believe is what I used. Here I am trying to figure it out, like, where do I need to put it? So 2 millimeter foam adhesive, and then 3 millimeter foam adhesive for the inside where the little picture is going to go. So I just need that in a couple spots. I'm going to line that up. And obviously I don't mind that this is hanging off the tag. I think that's kind of fun. It doesn't have to everything doesn't have to fit directly into the tag. But if you wanted or needed to have your images in that, scrapbook.com also has their nested tag dies, and you get tons of sizes. And I've used those in quite a few of my videos, and I love them. And that would be an option to use if you just needed something bigger. Okay, let's place the 3 millimeter foam adhesive strips inside where my little image is going to go. And then we can start putting that card together. I love that this is a matching set, so this is perfect for a gift for somebody, you know, their card and then their little tag for their present. I just think it's fabulous. Then we have our 2 sprigs that I'm going to be using here, and this is part of that really clean, non-distressed element. So between the sprigs and the frames, that is not touched. That is just how it is, bright white, completely normal, not distressed, and I think it turned out so lovely. So I'm just trying to get these tucked in here and kind of see how I want that to go. I want it to overlap that back stamp, but not cover up that whole image, because those rub-on transfers are stunning. So a little bit of liquid glue at the base, and then I can tuck that in. So pretty. I'm going to trim down, like I mentioned, that little bit of cord at the top. I actually end up trimming it all the way off. I was going to leave a little bit, but it was kind of bugging me, so I took that off. Then we have the sentiment that says celebrate, and I didn't do it yet, but I do end up distressing that. I just used my fingernail to distress the edge of the sentiment because I felt like that needed to be a little distressed. Let's put this card together. So I have little bits and pieces of that burlap ribbon, and I'm kind of just pulling it apart at the top. I don't want it to be nice, neat, and clean, but this is going to be behind our postage stamps, and I'm just going to hold that down till that liquid glue dries real quick, and then we can start adhering some of our pieces. So this larger one on the card is going to have 1 millimeter foam adhesive behind the frame, because the frame needs to be popped up, because I have that ribbon behind it, so it would not lay flat against the cardstock. So 1 millimeter foam adhesive, and then to pop up that center piece, I'm going to add another piece of 1 millimeter foam adhesive right behind it. So essentially that center part will be 2 millimeters tall. So now we have that background, and then I can place this right over. And then I can do 2 millimeters for the smaller frame, and then 3 millimeters for the center of that one. And then that is going to overlap that other postage image there. So let me just do that. Like I said, I was trying to figure out how much do I want it to overlap, but where do I put the foam adhesive? So here is 2 millimeter. And I just will not put adhesive on the side that's going to overlap the other postage image. And aren't these little dies so cute? I love the nested dies from scrapbook.com. I love any nested dies. If anyone makes nested dies, I just think that's so genius and smart, because why not have all of these fantastic shapes in different sizes so you can make different types of cards? I just think it's so perfect. Okay, now we popped that guy in there. Let's tuck our little sprigs in. And then we can add our sentiment, and then we can take a look at these up close and finished. Add just a little bit of glue at the bottom. And I like to do that. I don't want it all glued down flat. So I'm just using my fingernail to distress the sentiments. I felt like the scissors would probably be a little aggressive. I would probably tear it. It would not be a good thing. And then even though the one on the tag was already adhered down, I just used my fingernails for that one. So let me get some foam adhesive here. I had to grab a new one. I am using 1 millimeter because I really wanted the postage stamp images to be bigger, or taller, excuse me, than the sentiment. So I'm going to tuck this in here. Let's take a look at this up close. Look at that gorgeous tag. Aren't those images beautiful? I love that distressed background. And then we have our stunning card. I think everything just turned out so beautiful, so lovely. I love this. Thank you guys so much for stopping by and watching. I hope you feel inspired by these projects, and I hope you guys have an amazing day.